Heather, here we go. What's up, everybody? Rasa and Matt Gajewski here. You know what time it is. It's betting you time, which means it's all things college football. Week 6 is upon us. I can never get it right because the NFL is a week behind. It's week 6 officially. We're in the depths of conference play. Undefeated teams are dwindling by the week. We're going to recap what happened in week 5, and we're going to get you set for all the marquee action. Best bets, early looks, lines, deals across the industry. We got you covered here. If you just joined us for the first time, I'll say right off the bat, appreciate you. The community has spoken. Betting You is on fire right now, and we're so happy you guys are along for the ride. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel. The support means everything to us. Week 6, we got some interesting matchups, sir. How are you doing? And let's get into it.
I'm doing great. I'm excited for another week of college football, man. Yeah, let's get right into it.
Yeah, I do want to start actually just with a brief, let's see, even though I don't really want to do this because I did rally, late night rally, thanks to Texas State, Oklahoma, and Air Force. The day did not get started great for me in week 5. It was not my best week. How was your last week's card? Anything you want to highlight?
Yeah, I've seen some people requesting us recap our picks from the previous week, which I generally don't like to do, not because I don't want to face the music, but one, we're only limited to an hour on this show. Otherwise, YouTube negatively dings us. So that's part of the reason we don't have enough time. Second, I don't like a pet peeve of mine is people that just victory lap their wins and don't own up to their losses. Just a personal pet peeve. And plus, if you watch the show, like, you know the score anyway. But anyway, when 21-11 with 2 pushes, speaking just to getting the best line available, 2 of those pushes, they were Boston College and NC State, 2 atrocious games. But
Boston College.
Yeah, I mean, getting that at 3 versus 3.5 was a big difference in some of those games. But yeah, Texas State, I bet them 3 times. They were very good to us. Missouri, wagon continued to roll on. And we had West Virginia as well. That was not a popular play, but they're just a team that is going. I think a lot of people just are overrating TCU in the market power rating wise, and West Virginia is coming in a little underrated. But other than that, Clemson took care of business. Oregon took care of business. Syracuse, again, coming off that really weak non-con, was overrated in the market, whereas Clemson underrated a bit there. Arkansas against Texas A&M took an L in that spot. KJ Jefferson threw a pick 6 off a tip ball. Max Johnson did what we thought he was going to, turn the ball over 3 times, but Arkansas's offense is just inept. That's something to note for the future. Otherwise, I guess Akron, we'll talk about them probably more on Thursday, but another game where they come in with a positive post-game win expectancy and lose outright. I think they're on the no-bet list for me moving forward. And then I know you took Oregon State. That was another big win.
Yeah.
Team, I'm still not betting Utah games until we get Rising news, so congrats to you on correctly predicting he would miss the game.
Yeah, Oregon State is just a team when they're at home. I really like the target. That was probably my best pick. It happened to be on a Friday. Yeah, Arkansas hurt. Everything else was a little bumpy. And again, then Texas State, I just want to highlight this. So Texas State scored 42 points in the first half, and then they almost lost somehow.
They fumbled 3 times on 3 consecutive drives.
And then they brought in Hornsby, which was a genius decision because that guy is whatever. We could do a whole pod. We might have to do a 3rd episode, and it's just a Texas State episode. I'll spare you the details. All in all, we got out of it pretty unscathed. And you just mentioned you had some real good things late, and that's what we're about to do. But let's get into it. People are here for picks, and picks we are going to give you. And we're going to start with some of these big-time games, and it doesn't get bigger than the Red River rivalry. I think that's what they still call it. Oklahoma and Texas, and this is old school Oklahoma and Texas. What I mean by that, these teams are legit. This is national title implications. You're talking about 2 teams that absolutely are vying for everything, not just the Big 12. You see a 6.5 point spread. What do we got going on here with this game, and where are you leaning as we dive into it?
Best game of the week on a neutral field. Texas has the best win overall against Alabama. 34-24 was that final score, just to refresh you guys. Schedule otherwise was pretty damn weak. They played Rice, they played Wyoming, they played backup quarterback Baylor, and they just beat up on backup quarterback Kansas. Meanwhile, Oklahoma doesn't have quite the top end of schedule, but I think it's comparable just through and through. You have a win over SMU, Cincinnati, Iowa State, they're no good, but neither of these teams have had the easiest schedule, but they still have data points I'm looking for as we move forward. Oklahoma has an awesome offense. Their defense has surprised a lot of people too. They're actually second in defensive efficiency to date, and it's been solid for them. You look at what they've allowed to their opponents. They held Emory Jones largely in check. Cincinnati turned the ball over a ton on downs in that game. Iowa State's not a team that typically moves the ball either, but they also impressed against SMU, allowing them to just 4.6 yards per play. Awesome data points so far. Obviously, they'll be facing a far more difficult opponent in Texas. And I still have questions about this Oklahoma defense, especially in the secondary, which is kind of rebuilt from last year. They lost Connie Walker. We'll see if he returns. He's one of their corners. Justin Harrington, he's already torn his ACL. He's not going to return this season. So while they've been very good, I think there's potential cracks. And anytime you're facing Texas with A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, some of those elite players they have at the skill positions, that worries me. But I think Texas has some of the same concerns. They haven't really been tested through the air. They haven't faced a single quarterback that's actually like a legitimate threat of passing. JT Daniels, maybe. I mean, he plays for Rice. I don't really think that's too much of a threat. Bama, of course, they can throw the ball, but that was kind of the midpoint of that dysfunction with Jalen Milroe and everything that Bama is going through. Wyoming can't throw. Backup Baylor can't throw. Backup Kansas can't throw. They also don't have Jatavian Sanders. I think he got rolled up on, looked pretty bad. So maybe you have Texas a little less than full strength. But anyway, Oklahoma, I like their weapons. Dylan Gabriel's having an awesome season. Again, shocker. Angelo Anthony's been fine. I mean, players like Drake Stoops and Jaleel Farouk are doing enough. The offensive line is solid. They're only allowing a 14% pressure rate. Texas has a decent pass rush. But again, I don't think this team has really been tested on defense yet. We'll see, but I think this is probably a little closer than the market is indicating. I almost bet Oklahoma at +5.5, and I'm very happy I didn't because Texas is taking a ton of money. Yeah. I do think they're the better team rightfully, but as soon as we start approaching that touchdown mark, I'm just not sure there's that much separating these two teams right now.
I agree. It's a tough game. It's a tough game to bet. It's the kind of game, if you're going to give me important points, I would take either team and feel pretty comfortable. I want to ask you about the total. To me, I do lean over. It's at 60.5, give or take. Again, we're going to bring up Odd Shopper throughout the show. We can see all the lines. It just seems like both offenses, I think at times, are going to have some big play equity in this game.
Yeah, it's tough because both defenses have overachieved so far. Definitely outperform expectation. The pace is good in this game, though. So even if the defenses do succeed a little bit, you should have extra opportunities. Oklahoma 35th in pace, Texas 58th. So that's where I lean. If you're betting the over, I would take it now. I don't think this comes down. It's coming up a little bit already through the week. Not enough for me to play right. I don't know. I'll think about this. I've kind of been toying around with it, trying to figure out like how much of this defensive power rating metrics are legit and going to stick or moving forward. And I'm not sure.
Last question. Oklahoma, you're going to find them north of 2-1 in the money line market. Is there a number you're looking at there, or is this just, I'm going to try to get 6.5 or 7 and call it a day?
I think Oklahoma's live. Going back to preseason, I've been a little higher on them than market. I think we've been pretty neutral on Texas. I love this Texas team, but I think the gap isn't as wide as some people are suggesting.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I didn't actually answer your question.
It's
over 2-1 is okay. Yeah.
It's a risk tolerant. I think it's just all about how you're looking to structure. Like if you're saying I want to take the most extreme position, and not that it's a miracle by any stretch, but yeah, you're getting paid off for the chance that Oklahoma wins the game. And if they lose by 4, if they lose by 3, you're turning a win into a loss. But that's why they give you extra money for it. So a fascinating game. I think we see it the same. I'm looking to get an Oklahoma position. I'm also in no rush to bet it just yet because I do think 6.5s are popping up quickly, and those could turn in maybe to 7. If it gets to 7, 100%, I will be betting Oklahoma, no doubt in my mind. Next game, and look how beautiful this is. It's actually legitimately the next game. LSU and Missouri. The wagon themselves at home, looking to cement they've had a nice start to the season. You win this game, and now it's serious. They are 6.5-point underdogs at home against LSU. LSU's out. They're done. They lost again. What does that do to this spot? And are we backing the wagon, or can we say, let's cash in our chips and move elsewhere?
Yeah, good old Brian Kelly. Except he did it to him early this year. Now watch this like Ole Miss, LSU, Bama trio cannibalize each other in the West, but one of them still has to play Georgia. That would be awesome. But anyway, this game, I'm not sure if we can back Missouri yet. It's similar to Oklahoma, where I bet them probably if we were getting 7. The total is somewhat interesting at 63.5. The problem with that is Missouri plays slow. They're 80th in pace. LSU's 49th. But the reason I bring that up is you have just a complete sieve of a defense for LSU in the secondary specifically. This team is getting annihilated through the air, and I don't see this getting any better. They allowed 11 yards per attempt, over 300 yards to Jordan Travis. They just allowed KJ Jefferson to go for 289 and 3 scores. Jackson Dart threw for 389 and 10 yards per attempt. They're a revolving door back there. They've started a ton of different guys. Brian Kelly tried to blame it on youth, but I mean, you go and you look at the defense, like Major Burns, Andre Sam, Zy Alexander, and Sage Ryan are all upperclassmen. So I don't know what he's talking about, but they've been in and out of the lineup with certain players. Like Greg Brooks got hurt really early in the year. That wasn't great, but you've seen Denver Harris start. You've seen freshman Ashton Stamp start. They've both been bad. Deuce Chestnut missed the game, and he was benched prior to that anyway. He was the highly coveted Syracuse transfer that hasn't panned out. Zy Alexander got hurt in the game. I don't know how this secondary is going to get any better. And Brady Cook's quietly been very good for Missouri. Nearly a 74% completion, 10.4 yards per attempt, 11 touchdowns, no interceptions, 11 big-time throws, 2 turnover-worthy plays, and he has very good mobility. The offensive line has kept him clean. 17% pressure rate. The strength of LSU's defense is up front. If Brady Cook has time to throw, Luther Burden, Theo Wees, these receivers should absolutely decimate this LSU secondary. The problem is that LSU offense is awesome, and they've been able to score on everybody. I do think this is the best defense that they faced so far this year. Respect to Florida State, LSU probably could have hung 40 points on them if they didn't turn the ball over at the 1-yard line. Mississippi State, atrocious defense, lost all their premier players in the secondary. Arkansas's defense is what it is. And then Ole Miss. I like their defense, but it still has some cracks, and I think it's shown to be a little bit worse than I initially anticipated. The Missouri defense returned almost every starter in their secondary, a couple of premier all-conference players there like Rakestraw. It's a very good secondary. And they get after the quarterback. They're 21st in pass rush, 23rd in overall defensive efficiency. I think this is the best defense that LSU has faced to date. Now, is that enough to stop Daniels, Brian Thomas, and Malik Neighbors? I don't know, but it's at least worth mentioning. You give me a touchdown, and I probably take Missouri. 6.5, I still have not fired.
Hate to agree, but I do. I can't bet. I want to bet this so badly, but I can't do it at 6.5.
Would you at 7?
Yes, at 7, I'd be okay with it. And I know, if you're just tuning in for the first time, or maybe you're a little new to, you're saying like, it's a half of how can you like it at 7 and not like it at 6.5? It really does matter a lot. The equity, even if it's push equity, is super important here. And I'm not in love with it at 7, but I think it would push it into playable territory. I think at 6.5, I'll tell you this, and I know this sounds counterintuitive too. At 6.5, I'd rather just bet Missouri on the money line and fully leverage it and just get, north of 2-1.
Yeah, to like make it as quick as possible. There's key numbers in college football. Think field goals, touchdowns. You're more likely to land on 7 than 6 in a lot of cases. So betting a team at 6.5 versus 7 is significantly different. And the way I look at it, like in a game like this, LSU's taken a ton of money. It's far more likely that they move to -7 than it is Missouri goes down to like a +5 or something. So you're really not rewarded for betting 6.5 right now. You'll get more information throughout the week. And I still might bet Missouri at 6.5. I like this a little more than you, but there's just no reason for me to bet it now when if a 7 pops, then I'm sitting with a bad number on a key number too. Just pays to wait.
Absolutely. It's all about timing. All right, let's keep it going. We're going to talk about a lot of marquee games. And, Notre Dame, they've been in big games after big games after big games. That Duke game was, I don't even know what to really make of it. It was kind of absurd. The box score doesn't tell the full story, I'll certainly admit that. But now they've got to take on Louisville, a team that you correctly, I think early in the season when we talked about the ACC previews, you were pretty high on this team. And this is another 3 games, 3 6.5-point spreads. Weird, actually. And it's another live home dog. What do you think about Louisville's chances in this spot?
So I bet Notre Dame at
Okay.
6.5.
Okay.
And I don't feel good about it.
Okay.
But this number is too low. I think if you didn't have some of the offensive inefficiency for Notre Dame, you would see this closer to 10. The number I was looking to buy potentially Louisville at was 10. And again, like this is all about numbers. I would buy Louisville at a certain number and I would buy Notre Dame at a certain number. But this Notre Dame offense has been very good. And the problems with them are coaching related, which is something I hate betting. Akron reminds me of this. But this team is 8th in offensive efficiency, 24th in pass blocking, 27th in run blocking. Those are all awesome metrics. They had a positive post-game win expectancy against Ohio State. And all this to say, Notre Dame's leaving points on the table. And I think a lot of it is because of their coaching staff. Using play action on 10% of your pass plays as a run-based team is indefensible. Last week, they didn't have Jaden Greathouse or Jaden Thomas. Both are projected to return here. Already started practicing this week. So that gives them extra weapons. And man, that Duke game, I think a lot of people are incorrectly looking at this and saying, all right, Duke should have ran away with this and won the game. Like people are saying they got robbed. I didn't bet the game, so I didn't have any stake in it. But Notre Dame is 6 yards per play. Duke was at 4.8. Duke had 2 turnovers. They missed 2 field goals. Notre Dame also missed one. And Duke, of course, had the interception on their own 14, which led to a field goal and then fumbled at the end of the game. But, I mean, you just look at yards per play. Notre Dame was over a yard ahead of Duke. You will remove some of like this turnover noise, and Notre Dame still wins this game even without the turnovers. I find it hard to believe that this is a robbery. Sam Hartman's been awesome. I wish they wouldn't neuter him. He has 14 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. They just need to throw the ball a little bit more. They do this early in games a lot of times when they get up with leads and then they just neuter their offense. The offensive line is awesome. They can run the ball successfully. Hartman hasn't been under a lot of pressure, just 20%. The defense has been excellent too. Riley Leonard was at just 5 yards per attempt. Kyle McCord, 6.5 yards per attempt. Brennan Armstrong, who's now benched, 5.5 yards per attempt. So their defense has been excellent. On the Louisville side, they played nobody, which is why we liked them in the preseason. They have the easiest schedule in the ACC. They beat Georgia Tech by 5, who just lost to Bowling Green. Beat Murray State. Beat Indiana by 7 in a game they were live to lose. Beat Boston College 56-28. And then they just beat NC State by 3, 13-10. That doesn't tell the true score. That was maybe the grossest game of all time offensive inefficiency-wise. Plummer can't run. He is pretty good with his arm, 64% completion, 10.4 yards per attempt. The offensive line's pressure rate is 22%. I really question if that's going to stick against Notre Dame. By far the best pass rush they will have seen all year. And this Louisville defense is horrible. Haynes King, 313 yards, 9.8 yards per attempt. Taven Jackson, 299 yards, 8.8 yards per attempt. That's the Indiana quarterback. He just got benched against Maryland last week. Tom Castellanos, 8 yards per attempt, 265 yards. They've allowed rushing production too. Even if the Notre Dame coaching staff messes this up, like I don't see a way where this Louisville team is stopping them. Under a touchdown, love Notre Dame here. That gives you the margin of error for the coaching staff to mess things up and you can still cover the spread. Anything over 7, I'm out on though.
Yeah, I hear you. Haynes King. Yeah, he was stifled by Bowling Green last week. So that's what we got going on in the world. But no, I mean, battle tested. I agree. This is a huge step for up for Louisville. Some good wins, but I am with you, and it pains me. I'm far from a Notre Dame fan, but at 6.5, count me in. If you're looking for money line parlay pieces, you got to shop it. But this is a good one because I really do confidently think that they win the game. All right, we're just getting started. We talked about a couple of the big games, but I do want to mention, I'm going to mention a couple of different things throughout the show. So you want to stay tuned. But one of them, of course, is BetMGM. They have offers right now that allow you to get bonus bets for just adding some money to the book and just having another place to shop. When you see Odd Chopper, see those different lines, it helps if you have a couple of books ready to go. And BetMGM is one of them. I'll bring it up on the full screen right here. You see new BetMGM users in the link below. Bet 10, get $200 in bonus bets. All you do, you go to the link in the description of this video. You'll see BetMGM. You click it, you sign up, you throw in, say, $10. You bet it. $200 in bonus bets. It's that simple. You got to be 21 plus. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. But get that money, and I'm going to tell you, you're in a couple states. You're going to be eligible not just for BetMGM, but for some other exciting deals. But let's keep it moving here. Again, we got a lot of really good games to talk about, and one of them is Georgia and Kentucky. Now, Georgia, of course, to the champs, them losing at home would be a big upset. But I don't know how much Georgia you've seen this year. Georgia is bored at the very least, or they've got issues because they are letting middling SEC teams hang around with them. What do you see there? Are they bored or are there real issues?
They've been hurt a lot. They've been getting healthier. I think last week was the healthiest they've been all year, which is concerning. You end up with a single-digit victory over Auburn. Their defensive line has been a big issue. Auburn can't throw the ball and was having plenty of success running, especially with Peyton Thorne. I mean, he was taking off immense rushing potential and scrambles for him, which was shocking. I thought it was Robbie Ashford running down the field. It was Thorne. They're 91st in pass rush, so they're not getting after opposing quarterbacks either. Early in the year, heading into South Carolina and Auburn, these numbers to me indicated that Georgia, a team that hadn't used their starters over 50% of the time on defense, maybe had a little bit that they weren't showing, but it appears as these guys have gotten more snaps, maybe they're still ironing out kinks, but at the very least, there's some dysfunction with this defense. And again, they haven't faced good players like Spencer Rattler, Jacob Zeno, the Peyton Thorne, Robbie Ashford duo. They'll now be facing a competent offense. I think the most competent offense they've faced yet. Maybe you could debate Kentucky versus South Carolina. The reason I can't bet it, though, is the injuries on the Kentucky side. You had Berrien Brown and Tavian Robinson go down last week. Both are on the depth chart, but their coaching staff came right out and said that they are going to need to rely on depth, especially at the pass-catching positions, which I don't think bodes very well. This Kentucky offense has already struggled at times this year with those two on the field. Now you have Devin Leary, who's not exactly been great, 57% completion. He has 8 yards per attempt, which is great. I think that speaks more to what the receivers can do once they get the ball. But 8 big-time throws, 6 turnover-worthy plays. It's not the best ratio. The offensive line has been pretty good, just a 16.7% pressure rate, but Kenneth Horsey's been out. Georgia, I think, is going to test them more than any of the pass rushes they face. We're talking Ball State, Eastern Kentucky, Akron, Vanderbilt, and Florida. Georgia is definitely better than them, even if their pass rush has taken a step back this year. Ray Davis has been awesome, and that's probably the best path they have to victory because Georgia's allowed rushing production to worse backs than Davis, without a doubt. But, I mean, you stack the box on Ray Davis. If Berrien Brown and Tavian Robinson are limited, you probably beat Kentucky just by limiting the run. I don't know what they're going to give you passing the ball this week with an erratic Leary potentially down 2 of his top pass catchers. We'll see. What do you think about this?
Yeah,
And for the record, I'm not betting Georgia. This is strictly a stay away. I want to bet Kentucky, but they're not healthy enough for me to get there.
I really still am not ready to. I'm not write Georgia off. That's not the right kind of description. I'm not looking to back a team going into Athens against Georgia. I'm just not. Having said that, I don't really know what's going on with Georgia. If this dipped below, and I don't have any indication that's going to, if it crossed 14, got the 13.5, I would pick up exposure on Georgia. I'd be very content with that. So far in every game we've talked about, we've been hovering around really key numbers, and it's small edges right now. So far, the most profitable thing for Georgia has been picking them up live. You could do that against South Carolina. You could have done that against Auburn. You're getting them at pick'ems in the middle of these games. I don't anticipate that being here, but to me, this does scream like a 2-touchdown victory. And with that in mind, I don't really have much to say. I don't think Kentucky's going to have many chances to win the game, but I'm not sure Georgia wins 42-10 that often either.
Yeah, I mean, it took a last-second cover against Ball State. Ray Davis had a monstrous run. They were underachieving in that game offensively. They didn't score a touchdown in the first half against Eastern Kentucky. Akron's Akron. You beat Vandy 45-28. I guess that's impressive. The Florida win is by far their most impressive victory to date. It's in their most recent game, so you could look at this two ways. One, it's fresh in the mind of bettors, maybe an overreaction, or two, they finally figured out some of their offensive issues that they've had earlier in the year. I don't know, but with some of the receiver injuries, I'm not willing to bet them against Georgia here. This will be a firm stay away from me, unless, to your point, something live pops up. Georgia's been a slow starter, but we'll see. To speak on Carson Beck briefly, I think he's been okay. He's just like a pure game manager for them. 71% completion, 9.2 yards per attempt. That's great. 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 4 big-time throws, 3 turnover-worthy plays. Speaks to the offensive limitations, or I guess they're just not asking him to do much. The one thing I'll say about that is having back Ladd McConkey here should be fine. They're the healthiest they've been all year outside of offensive line where they don't have Amarius Mims. He'll be out for a bit, but yeah, stay away from me.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly say that Florida away from the swamp is not a serious team anymore. That team is awful on the road. So I don't really rate that win, but I missed that. That was a complete oversight by me. I should have bet Kentucky, and I wasn't even close to doing it. In hindsight, that was a bad one. But
I bet them and hedged out of it because of some of the things I already talked about, and now they're maybe down 2 receivers.
Yeah, Florida's got some serious issues. All right, more SEC football upon us. Arkansas and Ole Miss. What a game. What a game. That was just bananas last week with LSU. But they keep moving. 11.5-point spread here, 63-point total. We mentioned we both bet Arkansas last week. They couldn't get it done. They gave up a punt return for a touchdown, a pick six, all sorts of mess in Arlington. What do you see here in this game?
I think this is Ole Miss or pass. Arkansas has a ton of injuries on defense. John Morgan got carted off. Neck injury for him. Dwight McGlothern, one of their corners, has a concussion. Al Walcott, another safety, got a targeting call. He's going to miss the first half. Jaheim Thomas, linebacker, got hurt in the game. We'll see what his status is. On offense, their tight end, Luke Haas, broke his collarbone. He's certainly going to be out for a bit here. When you start adding in these defensive injuries to an inefficient offense, I have interest in Ole Miss. The number is not great. It's sitting between key numbers at 11.5, 12 in some spots. But I don't know how this Arkansas defense is going to stop Ole Miss with 4 injuries in your back 7. We'll see if they get some of these guys back, but Dart is going to dice up this team. He's having an awesome year, 64% completion, 10.5 yards per attempt, 11 touchdowns. He has double the amount of big-time throws compared to turnover-worthy plays. His mobility is awesome. He's extremely mobile. The offensive line has kept him upright for the most part, and his pass catchers are getting healthier. Prieskorn's back. Zachary Franklin's back. Trey Harris had knee surgery in week 2, was limited the last couple weeks. He had a monster game against LSU, and he looked explosive too. I always forget the name of this analytics account on Twitter, but they track miles per hour using AI. He was in the top 5 after having knee surgery 3 weeks ago. They're healthy. Judkins looked a lot better, way more healthy this week. I don't see Arkansas really resisting this team at all. What it comes down to is, can Arkansas keep pace and play with this team? Arkansas has a terrible offensive line, and we kind of thought this coming into the year. They lost 3 starters, did not hit the portal to replace them. They're 108th in pass blocking, getting KJ Jefferson absolutely killed out there. It's funny, you look at their stats last week against Texas A&M. It looks like they only have like 17 pass attempts, so I went back and I looked at dropbacks. They had 29 dropbacks. Almost half of them resulted in sacks or KJ Jefferson scrambles, just running for his life out there. Ole Miss is using players like Suntory Perkins more, their 5-star freshman. He started last week. I still think this defense is pretty good. They just have now run into Bama and LSU in back-to-back weeks. Outside of those games, and even with those games, when you schedule adjust, Mississippi has a pretty good defense overall. I think they're going to absolutely decimate this Arkansas offensive line, and then they should be able to score at will here. What it comes down to is number for me. I think I'm still going to bet this, though, man. What do you think about the number?
Yeah, I'm gonna bet it again. This just speaks to the power of odd shot, but there's a 10.5 out there. So
Really?
yeah,
Now
and
we're
there's a
talking.
couple of 11s. It's mix and match. If I can find anything in that range, I'm fine. I'm a
11
big
and a half for me.
yeah. I keep an eye on it. Again, the week is young, but it just speaks to the power of why you want to be on these books. And I like Ole Miss. I'm a huge fan of Dart. I love Judkins. I think it's just a tough place to play. And I watched because I had monetary interest. KJ Jefferson and Danny Dimes, they were two of the same this week of just running for their life. He's not going to survive the season. He was taking just absolute punishment back there. Arkansas cannot protect. True road game. This just seems bad. I think we're going to see when the dust settles in the West, Ole Miss to Arkansas is a gigantic gap in that side of the SEC. I don't think these teams are overly relatable, to be honest.
Yeah, I got to take some L's on Arkansas last week. Part of the reason I thought they could cover against A&M was, contrary to popular belief, A&M doesn't have a great defense. I think they're, I mean, they basically had the same defense as last year that was outside the top 100 in every key metric. So it was Max Johnson's going to turn the ball over, and he did that 3 times. Can Arkansas put up some points on this defense? But man, this was an overrating of the Arkansas offensive line against a middling Texas A&M defense, because they, even with that middling unit, they were able to get home a ton there. So we've got to readjust the good old Arkansas O-line moving forward. They are horrific.
It's a tough scene. It's a tough scene, but yeah, it's going to be Ole Miss for me. Alabama. And speaking of these teams, again, when you're in the West, everybody's playing everybody. There are no easy games. That's just what you get in conference play. Like, you have to hit the road in College Station. Slight favorite for Alabama. It's inside 3. Uh, can they go and do this? I mean, they've had some big games. Most have been in Tuscaloosa, though. This is a tough place to play. What do you see with Alabama here in Milrow?
Great segue into the Texas A&M game.
Yeah, look at that.
I love
Touchdowns.
Alabama at 2.5. I think it might be my favorite bet on the week, excluding the greasy games, of course. There'll
Well,
be
of
some
course.
really good ones there. But 2.5 for Bama, this is shocking to me. Texas A&M has now beat up a weak Auburn team and a weak Arkansas team. Auburn can't throw the ball. Arkansas can't pass protect. They got absolutely ravaged by Miami, gave up over 400 yards to Van Dyke, they gave up 374 to be exact, and 12 and a half yards per attempt to Van Dyke in Miami. And that team, Miami that is, had pretty good success on the ground too against A&M. I think we're severely overrating a defense playing against an FCS offensive line in Arkansas and a team that can't throw in Auburn. Bama is coming to town, who's, I think, severely underrated after the Texas game. You basically have a little bit of offensive dysfunction. And I personally think there was a little bit of infighting with the Bama coaching staff. I don't think Tommy Rees wanted to start Jalen Milroe. I think he wanted to put his boy Buckner out there, maybe see what Ty Simpson had. And after Milroe struggled a little bit against Texas, Tommy Rees got his way. Nick Saban let him feed those 2 bozos to the fire against UCF. They predictably face planted, and then Milroe gets his job back the rest of the way after Saban is proven correct. Milroe has had a good season. People watched the Texas game, and he missed a few throws in that game where Tommy Rees used him like a moron. 69% completion, 10.7 yards per attempt, 6 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 10 big-time throws, 5 turnover-worthy plays. He has awesome efficiency and double the amount of big-time throws compared to turnover-worthy plays. That doesn't even include the elite mobility he has. I think Ohio State and Georgia would kill to have Milroe under center compared to their signal callers. That might be a hot take, but neither of those quarterbacks can run, and Milroe actually has better efficiency than them both. Crazy to say, not to mention he's played a more difficult strength of schedule than either of those teams, playing Texas and Mississippi State and Ole Miss. Milroe is a good signal caller, and his weapons are pretty good around him. The offensive line is the biggest concern, but they've made some adjustments, which is great. I think Tommy Rees is calling less and less plays and having less and less to do with this offense. 31.5% pressure rate. Most of that came in the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks if you want to include the USF game. Against Ole Miss, they only allowed 4 pressures. Against A&M, they only allowed 5. This number is dropping drastically, and I think a lot of it is them just moving Milroe around a little bit, using him more on design runs, so defenses have to fear that, which is something Reese wasn't doing to begin the year. To me, it's just pretty good adjustment from Bama overall, and I don't think people are accounting for this. Just looking, I mean, the public watched the Texas game, and a lot of them haven't seen Bama since. Anyway, the secondaries also played much better. They got carved up by Texas. That'll happen to a lot of guys. It was Caleb Downs' second game. He gave up 118 yards. He's been much better since then. Kool-Aid's been awesome. And they've rushed the passer a lot better, too. The only main concern on defense is Deontay Lawson did suffer an ankle injury, but they've gotten pretty good snaps out of the backup here. We didn't even talk about A&M. Like Max Johnson, just the turnover machine that he is. He did exactly what we thought he would do. He turned the ball over 3 times. It's just Arkansas couldn't do anything with it. A&M does have explosive playmakers, but Max Johnson's going to play you out of games if he continues to turn the ball over like that. He is just reckless in the pocket. Anyway, I hope all that is a good breakdown for why I love Bama in this spot. I think I like alt lines in this game. I think they just destroy Jimbo Fisher.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's College Station factors in. There's no doubt A&M being at home is helping here drive this line, but it's 2.5 everywhere. You can confidently deploy units there, and I'm fine with it. I'll be with you on Bama. I'm not even in love with Alabama this year, and I don't even know if you are. It doesn't really matter for this spot. I think that they're kind of hitting their strides, and I do think people are, I'm going to say overreacting, because I watched the USF game, but that little situation there, I think was almost more concerning to people than the Texas game, and now they've kind of figured it out a little bit. I expect a pretty good performance here, and although I like Texas A&M better than you in life, I have the over on their win total this year. I don't think this is the spot for them at 2.5. That's a lot of love against Alabama. Give me Alabama as well.
One last thing.
The road, yeah.
You can find Alabama at 25-1 or better to win the SEC right now. They have a head-to-head over Ole Miss. LSU has 2 losses and has shown significant weakness. Georgia looks to be down. I don't know. What do you just quickly?
25-1 to win the SEC?
It might be gone. I saw it like right after the week ended.
I mean,
I think you can get some pretty good futures on Bama right now if you're willing to do that. But anyway, that's not what this show's about. But look it up if you can. Yeah,
I mean, Bama has, obviously Texas is not in the SEC, so they certainly control, and there's going to be a lot of ways where you're getting, say, 20-1 on a game versus Georgia, because that's who you're going to be facing, and you're going to like that. That's for sure. Interesting. I'm going to look at that right after this show. See, we're giving you plays on plays on plays. We go out west. We've been talking about the SEC for a while now on this show, and you mentioned some quarterbacks. Would you rather? You think all those teams would rather have Cam Ward?
I think Cam Ward would immediately be the second best signal caller in the SEC behind Jaden Daniels. That's right. I think Milroe's the second best quarterback in the SEC behind Daniels. Maybe you could say Dart. I like Brady Cook, what he's shown so far, but he hasn't shown. He's played like 2 good games. Last year he was a game manager. I don't know.
Ken Seals. Good boy.
That is not who I thought you were going to say.
No.
Maybe you could say like Rattler if you put Rattler behind a better offensive line.
Yeah,
I don't know. Milroe's pretty damn good, though. People are really discounting Milroe. Plus, Milroe runs. None of those other guys run except Daniels. Like, you have half of a playbook that you can use with Milroe that you can't use with other signal callers.
Well, Cam Ward is no joke. I know a lot of people don't see Wazoo, Washington State games and see what's going on out there. This guy can really play. Now, they are 4-point dogs going into UCLA. Talk to me about this game. Can Washington State keep it going, or is this one where they get tripped up?
I didn't think I was going to like Washington State against the spread as much as I do here. UCLA is one of the weakest home fields in the country. They are at home, but I don't think it means a ton. And I think this defense is severely overrated. And this is kind of me going against my model because I have them, this schedule adjusts. I have them 8th in defensive efficiency, 24th in coverage, which is what really matters against a team like Washington State. But they played Coastal Carolina, and I mean, they were using multiple signal callers in that game, but McCall moved the ball fairly well. They play San Diego State, who has a running back playing quarterback. FCS, NC Central, and then they played Utah, who has a running back playing quarterback. I understand it's 4-game sample. The model's just doing exactly what you expected to, viewing this as a very good pass defense. But I have extreme questions with the overall talent of the signal callers they faced. Cam Ward is leaps and bounds ahead of any of the quarterbacks they faced this year. So there's a little bit of uncertainty in this UCLA defense, especially in the secondary. Can a guy like Cam Ward dice them up? Absolutely. I think he's shown that against better defenses. Now, I don't know if I would take the UCLA defense straight up over Wisconsin or Oregon State, but I don't think those defenses are bad, especially Oregon State. They can get after you up front. Their weakness is in the secondary. But Cam Ward, man, that was maybe the best game I've ever seen him play. And right now he's completing 75% of his passes, 9.7 yards per attempt. He has a perfect touchdown to interception ratio. He has some mobility too. He didn't show that a ton last year, but 2.7 yards per carry. He's picking up important yards there. And the offensive line has been phenomenal. 14.5% pressure rate. That's very, very good. UCLA, again, I still am not sure what their defense is giving you, having faced the level of competition that they have. And then with UCLA, I don't know if this team can score themselves. They've been pretty bad on offense. Their offensive line has not been good. They're 109th in pass blocking, which is not great for a freshman signal caller in Dante Moore, who has a 55% completion. He has been somewhat explosive, 9.9 yards per attempt, 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He doesn't have a lot of turnover-worthy plays. Unfortunately, the turnovers he does have been extremely costly, like the pick 6 against Utah lost them the game on the first play. He does take a ton of sacks, though. Negative 53 rushing yards. That offensive line has a 30% pressure rate. So a lot of times it's not the interceptions that are killing these UCLA drives. It's, a 1st and 10, a 2nd and 7, where the offensive line allows pressure. Moore takes a sack, and then suddenly they're way behind the chains, and the defense can play that advantageously. Washington State's defense isn't phenomenal. They're kind of middle of the pack across the board. 67th overall, 107th in run defense, 44th pass rush, 57th in coverage. I think that's enough against a UCLA offense that has concerns on their offensive line and a young signal caller overall. I'll take Washington State here. Anything beyond 3.
And you can get that. Again, there's a 4 out there, which I think is very nice over on DraftKings. It's a tough game. Yeah, you mentioned Dante Moore. He's going to be really good, and he's shown some promise, but I'm a big fan of Cam Ward. I really like the way he plays. I like this team. I was dead wrong. I did not think Washington State would be good this year. They are good. They are away from home here, but it's not the most hostile environment, as you mentioned. 4 points. It's good enough for me. Not my favorite bet in the world, but I like Washington State in this game. Before we still got a handful of games for you. And of course, just like last week, I'm going to say the same thing. If you want to see real craziness with the under the radar games, let us know in the comments. We will film the bonus episode if the demand is there. We love doing that, talking about Akron's and Arkansas States and teams you've never heard of. If you want betting you overtime, just let us know. But I also want to give a quick shout out to Odd Chopper. I've been bringing it up on the screen. This is just the live odds feature. If you are looking for this, if you're looking for plays, if you want a market-based approach, I'll bring up the positive EV tool. Look at this. It populates in real time. It's going to show you what is inefficient out there. You've got a bankroll tracker where you can plug in your bankroll. It'll adjust the bet size for you. You could say, okay, I'm only on a couple books. Let me just see these 2. Boom. No problem. Look at that. Populates in real time. This will update in real time. This is the type of stuff that can really take it to the next level for you. If you're looking to get in and try this out, we still have this offer, 50% off with the code NFL50. You're going to get in there. Again, the link is below, and you get to test this out, see what it's about for half off. And if you love it, wow, you saved yourself a bunch of money and you're getting something profitable. If you don't love it, you got in and you get to test it out for 50% off. I really, really hope you guys check it out because Odd Chopper, we are innovating quickly there. Want you along for the ride. Now, when we look at this, let's get going and keep it moving here. I'll bring back the odds screen so I don't do anything crazy. So we're not talking about Sam Howell. Maryland and Ohio State. I quickly on Saturday night, I was looking And I was just like, you know what? I want to look at teams, like how many undefeated teams are there? And I went through and I was looking, and there's a handful out there. And then Maryland is just quietly doing their thing. Now, level of competition is weak, I would say. Is this their coming out party, or is this where the run stops for the Terps?
I would have loved to short them in a game like this. It was kind of the game I was waiting for all season after they go 5-0 predictably against this horrific schedule. They haven't faced a single team in the top 100 yet. Indiana, Michigan State, Virginia, Charlotte, and Towson, even with the 3 Power Fives there. I mean, these are 3 of the bottom 10 Power Fives in the country. So props to Maryland, taking care of business the way you expected them to. So I'll fall back on priors from the beginning of the season, what we saw in the offseason. Maryland only returned 4 starters on defense. They lost 2 corners to the NFL, Jacorian Bennett and Deonte Banks. Those are amazing players. They did bring in some transfers to replace them, but I don't know how good they are. They haven't played anybody capable of exploiting this team through the air. I mean, Indiana benched their quarterback midweek and fired their OC after the game. Michigan State has Noah Kim under center. They face Colin Drea for Virginia, who's a backup. I have no idea how good this Maryland secondary is. But the problem with this whole situation is Ohio State's offense has been dysfunctional. You lost Marvin Harrison in their most recent game. He got rolled up on. Honestly, I wouldn't play him if I was Ohio State if he's not 100%. You just don't have a real threat in this game, in my opinion, in Maryland. Save him for Penn State, Michigan coming down the road. Otherwise, offense is going to rely on Ibuka, Henderson, the run game. McCord's been bad. 64% completion, 9.2 yards per attempt is fine, but I don't think that's him. I think that's his receivers after the catch. 7 big-time throws, 5 turnover-worthy plays. It's almost an even ratio. I think this offensive line is bad. It only has an 18.5% pressure rate, but Ohio State has had some of the same strength of schedule things that Maryland has, played Indiana, Youngstown State, Western Kentucky. So what I did was isolate the pressures allowed in Notre Dame versus those other games, and they allowed 15 quarterback pressures against Notre Dame. Those 2 tackles, and they replaced the center too, but the 2 tackles in particular are major concerns, especially Simmons, the San Diego State transfer. He was horrific at San Diego State, and then Ohio State felt poor enough about their tackles that they needed to go out and pluck him. So I think there's a lot of systemic issues with Ohio State's offense, which will show up in more competitive games. I like Talia Tagovailoa and the receivers they have, but right now I just am not sure what the offense is going to be able to do against this Ohio State defense. They're 6th in defensive efficiency. Ohio State has morphed into a defensively sound team with Jim Knowles. Year over year, he's shown drastic improvement with this team. So I think they're going to have the worst scoring output they've had all year, Maryland that is. And then I don't buy Ohio State scoring on the other side. Pacing in this game, not great. Maryland 56th, Ohio State 69th. You're sitting around league average for both. With a little inefficiency on offense, I think I'm going to play the under in this game. It's bouncing a little bit all over the place, so I've been waiting. Maybe you see like a 57 or a 58 if you're lucky. But even at 56, 56 and a half, I still think anything above 55 is worthwhile. Where are your reads on this game?
Yeah, 57 is out there. Clicked it right now on DraftKings. I'm not going to play a side here. I just think that it's about right. Ohio State could be up, 24 and push it to 31. They could be up 24 and give up, Maryland can move the ball a little bit and it can end on 14 or 17. They got bigger things going on than beating Maryland. They're going to beat Maryland and they're going to move on, but I don't think 19 and a half is a great spot. So I'm going to look into the under because that's an angle I hadn't really thought about. And I don't have a play for this game. So I like it. We've got a handful of games still left. Some of these though won't take as long because, well, maybe this one will, because I'm watching. See, this is why this is what takes years off my life. I'm having a decent day on Saturday. I'm just sitting around. I'm watching the games that I bet. And what do I see? I see Georgia Tech down to Bowling Green by 10 points. And I'm thinking, wow, at home, they're 21-point favorite. Let me just check the live line. Oh, wow. Georgia Tech's a 1.5-point favorite. Oh, clearly, they're going to come back in this game. Let me just add a little live position to Georgia Tech. I do that. Haynes King gets stopped on a 4th and 1 sneak. Haynes King throws a pick 6 to Bowling Green. Bowling Green destroys the win total. Bowling Green destroys the bet. Georgia Tech, worst loss of the year by any team potentially. and now their reward is getting Miami on the road. What do we do here? What an awful loss for them last week.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. They have a new DC now, so
I would hope so.
Yeah, Bowling Green. Vasilik's okay for a max signal caller. He's among the best, but still, it's an indefensible loss. I brought this game up because it was a ranked game, and I kind of want to talk about Miami just briefly. They're the side I would play in this game if you were confident they were going to give you everything. A little bit of a look ahead. In the next couple of weeks, they've got North Carolina and Clemson. But this is a Miami team I've been trying to buy in the offseason. They were the sleeper from the ACC, and I think people are just overlooking them at this point. They beat Miami, Ohio, who's, I think, a top 3 team in the MAC. They crushed Texas A&M, and then they played FCS, Bethune-Cookman, and Temple. So they're kind of flying under the radar right now. If they didn't have such big games coming up, I think I would buy them. They're top 20 in every single major offensive efficiency metric, top 20 in both pass blocking and run blocking. So you don't even need to ask Van Dyke to do everything for you. But if you want to, he's been awesome. 10.5 yards per attempt, 11 touchdowns, 1 interception. His big time play rate, turnover worthy play rate is almost identical to the interception touchdown rate, which is insane. Offensive line's been elite, 17% pressure rating. They're doing a great job pass blocking. The defense has stepped up too. 6.3 yards per attempt to Connor Wegman. That's solid. That's the best data point we have. But man, I think this Miami team is super underrated. I'm probably going to bet them in both the next 2 games as long as injuries don't ravage the team or something like that. I might bet them in this game. The line has bounced around a little bit here. I know it's Georgia Tech's probably going to be motivated after that embarrassing loss, but I truly believe this is a Miami name your score type of game. We'll see. I think it depends on motivation.
Yeah, I mean, Miami is quietly, of all the teams in the country, you could argue they might be the team that has been the least tested. They've destroyed everybody. A lot of its level of competition, but they have not even been remotely in a game just yet.
But they played A&M. Like, having that data point is
absolutely
is a good one. And
they were, they're at home, but that was a very competitive spread, and it did not turn into a competitive game. That's credit to them. Inside 3 touchdowns here. I get it. 58.5. It's not giving you a ton of wiggle room, but again, I do get it, and I'm not betting Georgia Tech. I can promise you that.
Lost, yeah.
No. All right. Next game I don't have because I'm in New York. Syracuse and North Carolina. It is an 8.5-ish point spread, just looking at Odd Shopper right now. Talk to me. North Carolina is another team in the ACC vying for to maybe take the crown from Clemson. Did they get tripped up here by Cuse, or is this another easy W?
I like the total in the game over. I'm not buying either defense. I thought I honestly would be trying to play North Carolina because of Syracuse's non-con, but they got absolutely destroyed by Clemson. Both these teams play with pace is the first reason. Syracuse 21st in pace, North Carolina 39th. You're going to have a lot of opportunities to score in this game. On defense, I'm not buying Syracuse. Even though they beat Colgate, Western Michigan, Purdue, and Army, they just gave up 31 to Clemson. This is kind of what we expected, and I don't see this changing much. But then on the other side, North Carolina, they've allowed some production on defense. Rattler threw for 353. App State backup Joey Aguilar threw for 275. Nate Noel ran for 127. Freshman Minnesota running back ran for 138, and that's with Ethan Kaliak-Manis being inept through the air. Rodney Hammond, even for Pitt, averaged 5.9 yards per attempt. I still have questions with this defense, and I think you're going to see Syracuse be able to score. They have a ton of injuries. No Gadsden for this team. Isaiah Jones is out for a while, but they did return 2 of their offensive linemen who've been banged up, Kalen Ellis and Joe Moore. That should probably help with the run game, if nothing else, for this Syracuse team. With the pace lining up here, I'll take the over. I don't think we really need to talk about Drake May and the offense for North Carolina. We know they're going to hum. They have 2 good running backs. Getting Nate McCullum back has been huge for this team. North Carolina is going to do their part. It comes down to Syracuse. And I think the UNC defense has shown enough cracks with the pace in this game to get us over 59.
Yeah, there's 59s out there, 59.5. Looks like now is taken over, but I assume you're still good anything inside 60?
Yes.
Okay. And you can get that minus 110. again, across the board there. I can't join you, but I'll be rooting for everyone, all my friends here. All right, we got 3 games left, then we're going to recap. But I also, again, there's just a lot going on, and I want to make sure people know. I actually did, because I'm not going to call myself a producer, but I am moving these screens around, and I actually switched the graphics because I want people to know. Of course, BetMGM, we mentioned that. You got bonus bet opportunities in the link below. If you are lucky enough to be in a state that offers Bet365, you see it on the screen now. They have a stop what you're doing type offer. Bet $1, and get $365 in bonus bets. $1 into $365. The link is below. All you got to do, you click that link, you sign up, you put $10 in or more, and you claim that offer with that dollar bet. I mean, come on now. Now, not every state has Bet365, but if you're in Kentucky, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, Colorado, or Iowa, you have kind of hit the jackpot. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. I would kill for this to be in New York. It is not. Those 6 states, again, if you're looking for $365 in bonus bets off $1, that is the opportunity at Bet365. Again, you got to be 21 plus, 18 in Kentucky. Please play responsibly, but just another fantastic offer. If you're not in those states, again, the other links are below for you. We've got everything covered here, but I had to mention that before we mention Michigan and Minnesota. I guess we do have to mention that. Minnesota, I knew they weren't going to be good, and they're not. I'm not sure that this is the spot where they pull the row in the boat against Michigan. 19.5-point spread, 46-point total. Is this just a repeat of Nebraska last week? Does Michigan just grind them up?
I think so. And honestly, that game should have been much closer against Nebraska. I'm going to fade Michigan at some point this year. Nebraska averaged more yards per play, 6.6. Michigan was at 5.9. Nebraska had an interception on their own 26, immediate Michigan touchdown. Nebraska had a turnover on downs at the Michigan 12. They missed a field goal, and they had another turnover on downs at the 43. There's some things going on with Michigan that I think are going to cost them against more competent teams, which they won't face till November. Unfortunately for us, well, I guess it's kind of fortunate, Minnesota is not a team that can take advantage of any of those things. Minnesota might be the worst team in the Big Ten, which is saying a lot. They lost to Northwestern, and they had a positive post-game win expectancy to be in that game is unbelievable. They allowed 24 points to Louisiana Lafayette. They won 35-24, and that was actually like the spread of the game. I believe it was a push, depending on what number you got it. But it's kind of a death sentence to the program. You have a quarterback who cannot throw. Ethan Kaliak-Manis has been atrocious. 59% completion, 6.2 yards per attempt. He has 0 big-time throws and 5 turnover-worthy plays. He's a walking turnover. And the offensive line, they've been decent, actually. So this is an indictment on Kaliak-Manis. He's not the answer to this point. The defense has been a huge concern. They allowed 10.4 yards per attempt to Drake May. Okay, that's going to happen. But 396 yards to Ben Bryant for Northwestern, 8.1 yards per attempt. They allowed 172 yards to Zion Chris, the backup quarterback for Louisiana. Might not look good on paper, but that's 7 yards per attempt. They had 3 rushers over 4.5 yards per carry, including Chris himself. And Caboti, the Louisiana running back, was at 9.3 yards per carry. This defense is non-existent. Michigan can take the most vanilla neutered game plan in the world, which they do every single week, and probably ring up 50 on Minnesota. This under 3 scores is a gift. I cannot believe it is so low. There's nothing on the Michigan side that suggests they shouldn't put up 50 points in this game.
I hear you. Unlike some of the games we mentioned, Ohio State, we mentioned there were a couple other games where maybe a name your score situation. I'm okay with laying the points here on the road. I really am. I think Minnesota, it just shows Nebraska, Jeff Sims in that first game, that set up a lot of disturbing things. How they blew that game to Minnesota in hindsight makes it even worse. You can find 18.5 out there. I'm fine with that.
What did I bet? I don't have 18.5. I have 20.
Yeah. It's dipped. I mean, anything inside 3 scores, and you're not even close to 3 scores. It's not getting under 17. There's a 0% chance of that, but 18.5, 19.5, anything in that range, fire away.
Man, I wish I lived somewhere else.
Yeah, come on
It's
down.
still 20 for me on my book. This is
Yeah,
insane.
it's ticked down at most other spots. Uh,
I might have to bet it again.
you come,
If
the
it comes
water's
down, I'm
warm.
going to bet Michigan again.
I want to play this game because it's fun. This one's a little trickier. Would you rather have Milroe or JJ McCarthy?
See, McCarthy's pretty mobile. I think that's a big difference between him, McCord, and some of these guys. Michigan's offense is so neutered. They never use it because they never have to. I'm going to say McCarthy, but it's close. Closer than people might think.
Closer than people might think. I would also take McCarthy. I think when they need him, he will be ready to go.
He has great efficiency metrics. His sample's just tiny.
Yeah. Him and Roman will, that guy is
Cornelius is good too, man. And Loveland, they've got good skills.
They've got dudes. They're not going to need him this week, though, for obvious reasons. All right, here we go. We got Texas Tech and Baylor. This game could have been relegated to the egregious zone, honestly. But they made the main episode. They should both be thankful they're graced in this episode. 1 point spread. Talk to me about these teams who have dealt with all sorts of injuries. There's a lot going on with these programs.
I think it's almost impossible to bet a spread here because of the volatility with both teams. But man, I can certainly bet an over. And okay. I think that's where you want to look. I'm surprised it's at 58. With Texas Tech, you have one of the fastest teams in the entire country. They're third in pace. They run that crazy Zach Kitley air raid. And they have a semi-competent backup in Baron Morton. He doesn't change the offense. Baylor's 45th in pace with a 56% pass rate. And they just returned Blake Shapen, who's a massive piece to this offense. Robertson was horrible in his place. I think you have defensive concerns on both sides. Texas Tech allowed 359 to Bo Nix. That's 8.2 yards per attempt. And then they just allowed 8.2 yards per attempt to Donovan Smith. Parker Jenkins and Donovan Smith both rush for over 5.5 yards per attempt. And outside of that, Wyoming has a one-dimensional offense. West Virginia had Nico Markiel under center, and they still won. So I think this Texas Tech defense has major concerns, especially in run defense. They're 89th there. Baylor will still use Richard Reese and Pendergast and some of these players to run the ball. But then this Baylor defense, one, they're very injured. Reggie Bush is injured. They still have injuries to Gerald Boykins and Trey Emery on the defensive line. Isaiah Dunson didn't play in their last game. I think that was more or less just because they returned some other guys. But even with the guys they returned, Devin Lemire and Tevin Williams, both of them had a horrible game against UCF. Maybe that's just rust. I don't know. But I don't think the starters are much better than the replacements. We don't need to dive into every individual box score for this Baylor defense. They lost to Texas State for one.
Yes, they did.
They gave up 20 to Utah on a backup quarterback, blasted by Texas. And then we all saw the shootout that ensued last week. Both defenses are bad. Pace is good in this game. I think that's about the easiest way to say it. I'm surprised this game isn't at 60 points for the total.
57.5 at some spots.
Maybe it's just, I think books are kind of viewing like quarterback play here. Baron Morton has not been great, but I mean, Baron Morton played a lot last year. We have a pretty good sample of him. He's not horrible. He's definitely a downgrade from Shug, but he's not like the worst backup. I think he's probably closer to like a Jason Bean than even a Robertson for Baylor.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Again, we have seen him. No problem there. As you mentioned, I want zero to do with the game itself in terms of a spread. Just not for me. Final game. Again, you want more betting you. We're here to provide it. Just if you can, hit the like button. Join the channel. Make sure you don't miss out. I'll give you a hint. We're going to do a bonus episode Thursday. We're going to get into teams that you've never even heard of. Some real sick, disturbing stuff. We're ready to go. Maybe Louisiana Monroe. But in the meantime, we got one more big game for you before we recap our bets. And it's taking place early in the day, I'm pretty sure, if I could find the game. Society, there we go. No, early in the day. It's at 6:30 Eastern. Good job, Ben. It's Colorado and Arizona State. It's come down a little. Arizona State has taken some money. Is this a spot where Colorado gets tripped up, or is this a rebound spot? Because what a fascinating game last week. They got destroyed, but they also made it respectable and rallied late to really show that they can hang with some of these good teams.
Yeah, another game I love the over. Not going to touch a spread. If I did, it would be on Colorado. I might bet Colorado. I'll talk to you why. I think people accidentally are overrating Arizona State, but
That's
ultimately,
me.
I think both teams can score. Colorado 10th in pace, Arizona State 27th. Both teams extremely pass heavy. Colorado 60%, Arizona State 57%. So all of the game environment factors lend itself to the over here. Both teams decimated in the secondary. Travis Hunter's still out. Miles Slusher hasn't played since week 1. Carter Stoutmire's been out for a while. One of the replacements, Kendrick Breedlove, didn't play last game. Shiloh Sanders didn't play. Travis Jay's been injured. Cormani McClain did get snaps, probably because they have about 3 healthy DBs, and he played well, but obviously they would prefer not to use him. But Arizona State might be just as banged up. Jordan Clark missed their last game. He's one of their corners. Trey Brown, their stud linebackers, out till at least the bye. Antoine Cooper, nose tackle, got hurt in the game. Will Schaefer, the backup to Trey Brown at linebacker, missed the game. And holy smokes, this offensive line for Arizona State is horrible. There's like 5 guys injured. I won't get into it. But the reason I think Colorado might win this game straight up with the points, laying the points, I should say, is because of this offensive line. Emmett Bull's been out. Isaiah Glass has been out. Max Heenacher, I don't know how to say his name. He's their backup tackle to those 2 guys. He's out. Ben Coleman hasn't played this year, starting guard. Bram Walden got hurt last week. They have 5 offensive linemen injured. There's no wonder Jaden Rashada got absolutely killed out there. I actually think Bourguet is the best quarterback for this offense right now. I believe Rashada is the most upside long-term, but like you don't want to throw him out here behind like 5 FCS linemen. Bourguet actually has like legitimate snaps and experience, and he can deliver the ball quickly. 65% completion, 8 yards per attempt. He's not the most mobile, but we have a pretty good sample of Bourguet. He has a 70% career completion percentage. This is a guy that is like well over 250 attempts too. He's not some new starter. Bourguet, I think, is fine and can move the ball enough against a non-existent Colorado defense, where I believe the over comes in with the pace and the pass rate for these teams. But man, these injuries make me want to play Colorado. How do you view it?
Like the over. I definitely see both teams scoring. I'm more confident in Arizona State. I'm a little freaked out. I need to see. You mentioned like 10 guys, and 5 of them were linemen. I can hope they can get. I'm a big fan of they've done their best to mask this quarterback situation. They like ran out of quarterbacks, but Bourguet I'd rather have him than Pine.
Same. They've had 3 quarterback injuries. That speaks to how bad their offensive line is. These guys are getting killed back there.
They really are. I mean,
the good thing is Colorado doesn't rush the passer. They don't defend in the secondary. If you were going to like look at a scoring environment for Arizona State, this is probably their best scoring environment the rest of the way against a defense that can't do anything.
Yeah, and they're at home. But it has come down. If it was, famous last words, if it was still at 6.5, yes, definitely would be betting this. There's no doubt. I might take a stab. I might take a stab at the money line. I want to wait. I think it's may have flat and there could be buyback on Colorado. So we'll see. They're always in very lucrative games in the sense that there's a lot of interest in Colorado this year for obvious reasons. So we'll keep an eye on it. You mentioned over 16.5 though. All right. We didn't get to any games. Again, we have a second episode coming up, but at Matt_Gajewski at JazzRazDFS on Twitter. Well, let's do it. Recap time. You've got a couple of bets to make. The pressure is on in society. Someone says to you, okay, give me your 3 favorite bets, 2 favorite bets, whatever. Who are you telling them to bet this week?
Number 1 is Alabama. I'm just going to limit this to the marquee games. We'll get to the.
Oh, yeah. Yep. You may be frozen, or I could be frozen. We're not really sure about that, but I'm going to recap me while Gajewski stays frozen. It'll be a little interest for the late people on this show.
I think this is a significantly better Alabama team. Bama defense. They're going to be able to score on you, so I'll take Bama. Number 2 be Washington State. Love playing them as a dog. +4 if you can find it, but anything above 3, completely fine. I don't think UCLA has been tested. They played 2 backup quarterbacks in their most recent games. And other than that, Grayson McCall and Coastal Carolina were the best team they faced. Last one for me, I am going to go over in Texas Tech and Baylor. Pace lines up here. Quarterback play, I think, will be fine enough for Texas Tech where you don't have to worry about the offensive inefficiency. Both defenses have been horrible in this spot. So those would be my top 3.
There you go. And yeah, I couldn't tell if you were frozen or I was frozen. So we made it through. I was worried there for a second. I was rambling, but you got Alabama, Washington State, and over 57.5 for Baylor, Texas Tech. Those three.
Yes.
I'm gonna throw in one more for the people. I think Ole Miss is really gonna just keep that momentum going. They're at home against a team in Arkansas that I don't know how they fix the problems. And when I say the problems, I mean the fact that KJ Jefferson cannot get any time. I think that Ole Miss is going to move the ball and score. Dart has been awesome. 11.5 is fine. You can even find a 10.5 if you dig. I'm going to put that on the board. I echo what you said about those other games, and we got plenty more coming as we. You know what? I'm going to do a 5-pack. I'm calling an audible at the line of scrimmage. I'm putting Notre Dame in there. I think Notre Dame inside 7 is a good one. You mentioned that early in the show. These 5, I'm on board with. And let's see what we can do. There we have it, friends. Again, betting you in the books, whether you're listening on podcast, watching on YouTube, it is really appreciated. The support that me and Matt have got has just been second to none this year, and it is just awesome to see because we love college football. That's why I want to give you all the information. In addition, make sure you take advantage of all those offers in the industry. The links are below for BetMGM and Bet365 and Odd Shopper if you want more bets. We're here for you. We're so excited to talk egregious schools in a couple days, but we're going to bounce on out of here for week 6, main slate. Enjoy these games. Good luck, and stay tuned for more betting you here on Odd Shopper. Until next time, guys, enjoy, and we'll talk to you soon.